From the land of lakes, this is 10,000 Takes. Brought to you by Minnesota Score Radio. Wally and Eric back for yet another month as we slice and dice the always busy, always topical, super saturated Minnesota sports scene. And we are into December now, Wally, and in the NFL they call this month the Dash for Cash. And how fitting. The Vikings will be in Las Vegas, where everybody's hoping to get rich, right?
Yeah.
As they play the Raiders at Allegiant Stadium, another dome.
Another dome, yeah. Copycat dome of what you have.
They do have natural grass, at least for a surface. But
do they have soapy snowflakes?
I doubt it. Oh, my goodness. What a gimmick.
Yeah, you just love that every time you see it when you're at the House of Noise in downtown Minneapolis. Yeah, I mean, this is a game that I guess both teams desperately need, right? I mean, these are both teams kind of hanging around the playoff picture, whether they're in or not. Probably will depend heavily on how things go this week. So we'll see. But these are two storied franchises, so this is not a rematch of the 1977 Super Bowl. This is a matchup of a couple of teams that have long lost their identity, I should say.
I agree. I don't think there's any Raider mystique anymore. I mean, they used to have this image and persona as a bunch of bad boys, and, you know, they would cross the line, and you didn't want to play them. They were physical. First of all, in today's NFL, you can't play that way. They don't allow it anymore because of the silly rule changes. And they've moved into a dome. I kind of miss the Oakland Coliseum and the infield dirt for the first month of the season mixed with the grass. And, of course, we all know the Minnesota Vikings are a dome team. They may as well be a West Coast team or a team that's down in Florida or Texas, because when you play indoors, you think differently. You approach things differently when you go outside. Right. But in this case, they'll be inside.
Before we get into this a little bit more, I got a question for you with regard to NFL rules, because you talk about how the rules have changed, right? Do the NFL officiating crews, do they know the difference between grounding the football and not grounding the football? I mean, that game that last Monday night, the Vikings and the Bears, they called grounding one time on Josh Dobbs, and he was in the grasp, and he clearly was throwing the ball away. They're all doing it. But Justin Fields did the same thing. I don't know if it might even been the very next series, and I saw your guy Kevin O'Connell going nuts on the sideline, and I agree with him. I just don't. Now, the officials may be being put in a bad spot by the National Football League with the rules, but let's be clear what the rule is going forward, because I don't even know what the rules are anymore.
No, and that's the new thing I'm seeing. The quarterback, especially the guys who can extend plays, the elusive quarterbacks with fleet feet, getting outside of the hash marks, outside of the box, and then just tossing it toward the sideline.
Exactly.
Almost like a pitch or a lateral. No, I think you bring up a good point. And look, we can bang on the refs all we want. They're just enforcing the rules they are told to enforce. Okay. It's like police officers. They carry out laws that are on the books. I don't like the rules. I go above the refs. I go to the NFL, and they have a bad set of rules in place now. We don't know what a catch is anymore because they slow it down frame by frame by frame, to the nanosecond, and you can make anything look incomplete or complete. How about what your eyes saw in real speed?
Yeah. No, I don't disagree with that. I just think it's so hard now with the National Football League with that. And, with the defensive backs being hamstrung, I mean, okay, 30, 40 years ago in the 70s, 80s, and even into the 90s, teams weren't throwing the ball as much as they do now. Because they are throwing the ball so much, because the rules have changed to allow this to become a passing game, which is basically what it is. NFL games are passing scrimmages with a few runs mixed in. Okay? Back then, yeah, when you had hands on a receiver as the ball was coming down, or when there was any kind of contact at all, it was an interference call. You can't enforce that same rule now that you did 30 years ago, because you'd have a penalty on every play. And lo and behold, we get penalties on every play, it seems like.
It sickens me. I don't recognize today's NFL. And here's the deal. This is all about the NFL wanting more scoring, placating the fantasy folks, because the NFL thinks offense is what everyone wants. Personally, I like defensive games once in a while. How many scoring drives, and I don't know the number, but I'm going to guess it's pretty high. How many scoring drives in the NFL are aided by either roughing the quarterback call, which is bogus? You can't, I saw one, the Bears had one against Joshua Dobbs. Guy was just running into him after he threw the ball. It wasn't anything cheap, but it was 15 yards. Or how many scoring drives are benefited by one or two pass interference calls? We see them all the time against the Vikings or for the Vikings, every game I watch. So but that makes the game better because you got points out of it. It's like artificial to me.
Yeah, no, it's hard to watch. You don't know what you're going to get from one play to the next, and the officials, I think, are as confused as the players, as the coaches, and the NFL is spinning out of control.
Yeah, and then you have obvious ones like Kareem Jackson on Joshua Dobbs in the Denver-Minnesota game, and they don't call it.
And they didn't call that one at all. Yeah, I don't get it.
But he gets sat down for 4 games.
Yeah, well, he should have get sat down for 4 games, except that the officials on the field should have called it then and there, but they didn't. So, anyway.
All right, well, stick around. We're going to heat up the hot stove. Talk some baseball. Bobby Nightengale, Minneapolis Star-Tribune Twins reporter, will join us here on 10K Takes. Your purple ticket.
In Lakeville, Minnesota, dozens of meeting venues are ready to host your next corporate event, banquet, and holiday party. Lakeville has unique conference facilities, a variety of hotels, an abundance of team-building options, and dining that are sure to impress. For suggestions that suit your needs, please call the Lakeville Convention and Visitors Bureau at 952-469-2020 or go to visitlakeville.org. Lakeville, we mean business.
The excitement is real at Fond du Lac Casino. With over 650 slots to play, there's always something going on right in the heart of downtown Duluth. Come in to enjoy 2 floors of entertainment where you'll find some of the hottest new games along with a number of the old favorites. Play at your comfort level, all the way up to high stakes where the payouts can be huge. Relax in a comfortable atmosphere and maybe get a beverage while you gather and have fun with your friends. Open 7 days a week so you can
have a great time out at Fond du Lac.
I've been meaning to give you these for many years. I think they're perfect.
Maya?
Oh, I love your earring. Why didn't you try these?
It isn't just about vision. It's about care. Nobody cares for eyes more than Pearl.
This is 10,000 Takes, and in the midst of the cold weather that is here and soon approaching even colder weather, time to talk a little bit more baseball. And joining us now is MLB Minnesota Twins beat writer Bobby Nightengale. Joined the Star-Tribune staff, about mid-season or so? Is that right, Bobby? This past season? You climbed on board just in time for that Twins fruit train to the postseason, right?
Yeah, I missed a lot of the bad offense. I joined in June, so got to see the offense kind of come alive in the second half.
Yeah, perfect timing. Okay, you mentioned offense, but it's pitching that I want to start off with because really, if you get down to it, their starting staff was part of the reason, or much of the reason, that they did make a mini run in the postseason this year. However, in 2024, they're going to be minus a couple of guys, Kenta Maeda for one, and most notably, they're going to lose Sonny Gray, who goes to the St. Louis Cardinals. I don't think either of these was unexpected, but what are your thoughts on the departure of those two?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you that neither was really that unexpected. Sonny Gray obviously was one of the best free agent pitchers in the free agent market. So he had a lot of teams after him. A 3-year, $75 million deal with the Cardinals. Has a club option that can make it $100 million. I mean, the Twins weren't going to do that for free agent pitchers. I mean, that hasn't been their MO. And they get a first round pick basically out of it too. So they gave him a 1-year qualifying offer. He declined it. Became one of the top free agents and signed with the Cardinals. And the that'll be the toughest one for the Twins to replace, just because he was, their number one starter last year, finished second in the Cy Young voting. He was healthy for an entire season, so I mean, you lose a lot with him. Kenta Maeda, you lose kind of the depth innings that he provided. Pitched really well in the second half, but obviously dealt with some injuries during his time with the Twins. So, like you mentioned, I mean, that was the strength of the team. That was the reason they, ended their playoff streak, the reason they made the playoffs in the first place. And, they're going to have to make do without two of the guys that were, that really kind of anchored their rotation in the second half.
And Bobby, so we know the Twins are paring payroll, including scouts, not just in what they're paying players, and scouts are the lifeblood of any organization. So this is my opinion, but as I look at the AL Central, I still feel like the Chicago White Sox, they'll spend money, but they tend to be inept. They haven't done a whole lot in recent years. And Kansas City's more focused on a new ballpark. Cleveland, Wally's team, they went on the cheap and basically gave up. And the Twins are scaling back. Is Detroit now a team to keep an eye on with Maeda there and Javi Baez? And I'm sure they're not through.
I don't see them kind of in the same tier as the Twins and Guardians yet. I think those two are probably still, I know Detroit finished second place in the Central, just barely above Cleveland last year. But they still have a lot of young pitching that they need they have kind of their hopes pinned on. I mean, if all those guys stay healthy and all those guys progress, sure, they could definitely make a run. But I think the scary part with young pitching is it's never linear. I mean, so you have a good season, then a bad season. And so I think that's kind of where the Tigers are, is they have some good guys. When they signed Kenta Maeda, I mean, the focus with them was, okay, he can be a mentor to a lot of our young guys, and also helps them sign, they're hoping sign Japanese players in the future. So that was kind of the twofold behind the Maeda signing. But, I mean, he still are, probably their number 2 or number 3 starter in their rotation, which if he was with the Twins, probably closer to number 4 or number 5. So, they're going to ask him to do probably a little bit more than the Twins had. And with his age, with his health in the past, I mean, I think that's kind of a risky thing. And then all the young rotation guys. So I still think Twins and Guardians are just a cut above.
What do you see the Twins doing, if anything, in adding to their roster going forward? Do you believe that they maybe will trade an Jorge Polanco and try to add a piece to the rotation, or do you think they're satisfied with, Louis Varland coming up in the back end of that rotation and seeing what happens, kind of rolling the dice that way?
Yeah, I mean, I think the roster as it's currently constructed, if you win, the current payroll, I think that's kind of the top tier level they're going to do. So I do think Jorge Polanco gets traded. I do think Kyle Farmer gets traded. Just because you have so much infield depth. I mean, you have Nick Gordon on the cheap. You have Willie Castro, took some strides last year. Jose Miranda will be kind of a year removed from his shoulder issues. So I think infield-wise, Brooks Lee's at AAA. I think they feel good about their depth they have there. So, I mean, you're going to probably see that turn into, add some pitching, whether that's the bullpen or the starting rotation. I think they definitely want to add a starter to give Louis Varland competition for the number 5 spot. I think they definitely want to add a reliever that they can kind of fill Emilio Pagan's role. And I do think they want to add a first baseman. Alex Kirilloff hit well there at the end of last season, but he can also go to the outfield if you add a first baseman. And I think they kind of want like a thumper type. I mean, at least someone to pair with Kirilloff. But I wouldn't be surprised if, they tried to add a true starter at first base.
Bobby, I know we're still in the off season, but what do you think the Twins' expectations for Byron Buxton will be in 2024? Last year, he never touched the outfield grass. He was always a DH, and he was still injured part of the time. The previous year, it was we set the bar at 100 games. What are they going to do in 2024 with Byron?
Yeah, I think they have to go into it saying, they need a second option to start at center field. Michael A. Taylor was their, primary center fielder last year. He's a free agent now. I think they have to fill that role. I think they want Byron Buxton to say, okay, that's, if it's 3 days in center field a week, and that's the best we can do, we can live with that. But I mean, the DH thing didn't work. One, it didn't keep him healthy the entire year. 2, he didn't hit well enough in the DH role to be a full-time DH, especially when you had kind of a crowded infield and guys vying for playing time there. So I think going into this year, I don't know how many games you can count on him for, but I think the difference this year is last year I think they kind of went in the season saying, okay, he can be our DH and we can move him back to center. I think this year he's definitely our center fielder. Maybe it's a part-time center field role, but that's the goal, is to keep him in the field this year.
Do you think they'll go out and get another center fielder, much like they did with Michael A. Taylor this past season?
I do, yeah. I mean, internally, they just really don't have any options besides Buxton, and I don't think you can count on him. Austin Martin, one of their top prospects, finished the year in AAA. He's probably one of their top internal guys for it, but he's barely played the position as a professional. So, and Willie Castro, I mean, probably hasn't done it enough full-time where you'd feel comfortable doing that. So I think that's probably one of the top things they have to fill, is at least get a Michael A. Taylor of last year. I think he exceeded expectations, but someone like that going into next season.
At the time of this recording, Shohei Ohtani does not have a team. So, and I know the Ohtani camp wants to keep everything, basically under close wraps. They don't want any leaks about where he's going to go. Where do you think he ends up, and what's the price tag?
I still think it's the Dodgers. I mean, it just makes, if you enjoyed living in LA, the Anaheim side, I mean, it's really, you don't have to change your lifestyle. You can kind of do everything you've been doing, except you play for a winner, and you get more money out of it. I'd probably say like 10 years for $450 million, something like that. And then I'm sure there'll be like escalator clauses. And I mean, he can't pitch next year because of Tommy John surgery. But I'm sure there'll be escalators in there that say if he's healthy as a pitcher, maybe it goes up to $500 million over 10 years or something like that.
All right, if you had to guess, what do you think the splashiest move that the Twins will make in the postseason? Or what is the splashiest move you think they should make, keeping in mind the payroll restrictions that they put on themselves?
I think if you traded enough payroll and created the financial flexibility, I think Rhys Hoskins is a free agent, like the top free agent bat. I think that would make a lot of sense for them. Would fill first base. He missed last year because he tore a ligament in his knee. But was a big basher in the Phillies lineup for a lot of years. Bryce Harper's now their first baseman, so doesn't really have a chance to go back to Philly, it seems like. But I could see him making a lot of sense. And then you move Kirilloff to the outfield, and then maybe that means Max Kepler's traded in that scenario to create even more payroll space. But to me, he makes a lot of sense, especially as a right-handed bat and a quality right-handed bat after they struggled against lefties for a large part of last season.
Joe Mauer is in the Minnesota Twins Hall of Fame. He's now on the Hall of Fame ballot. Does he get in, and if so, when?
Yeah, I think it'll be close. If it's not this year, I think it'll be next year for sure. But 75% is the threshold that you have to get to make the Hall of Fame. I bet he's right around 70 to 80%. You just hear from a lot of people, maybe he didn't catch enough games. But still, I mean, there hasn't been many catchers that produce as much offense that he did. Not that many catchers can win batting titles. He won an MVP. So I think if it's not this year, it's next year.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think as time has marched on, I think that he has gotten more and more support in what exactly you're saying, Bobby. Appreciate spending the time with us, Bobby, and we will again check in with you a little bit later during this off season and see where things are at.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks,
right.
Bobby.
He is Bobby Nightengale. He is a beat reporter for the Minnesota Twins and at the Star-Tribune. Back with more here on 10,000 Takes after this.
I've been meaning to give you these for many years. I think they're perfect.
Maya?
Oh, I love your earrings. Why didn't you try these?
It isn't just about vision, it's about care. Nobody cares for eyes more than Pearl.
Finding the ideal place to stay is important for business travelers. Lakeville, Minnesota is conveniently located off I-35, just south of the Twin Cities, with a variety of hotel choices. Lakeville offers convenient amenities such as shopping, walking trails, golf, and more. Our unique meeting spaces, historic downtown, live music, and over 60 dining options are sure to impress. Book your next stay in Lakeville and experience convenience, comfort, and quality. Find your perfect hotel at visitlakeville.org.
10,000 takes, and the Minnesota Vikings kind of coming back down to earth with the Joshua Dobbs games where he threw the 4 interceptions, okay. And the Wild spinning out of control down the drain, and the Twins letting guys go. What's the positive now in Minnesota sports? And the Gophers going to the toilet bowl.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you got to cheer for? It's the Timberwolves, right? Do you trust it?
No,
course not.
they have a checkered past, as we all know.
Yes, they do.
I think Timberwolves fans right now, and there's reason to be optimistic. They've looked very good early on, cohesive, well coached. Ant is a super duper star. But I think if you're a T-Wolves fan, you feel like the exact same way a Detroit Lions fan feels right now. Can this last? Is it sustainable? So they are on the clock as being the one team, I suppose, that gives you hope. I was going to bring up Gopher men's hockey, but they couldn't seal the deal against Quinnipiac, wasn't who they lost to?
They did.
My goodness. I was going to bring up the Minnesota Aurora, but they cratered in the playoffs. So women's soccer. Minnesota Lynx aren't what they used to be. So, yeah, who do you pin your championship hopes on?
It's got to be the Wolves, right?
Yeah. Oh, boy.
And, okay, now, do you think that they are the next team to win a championship? It hasn't happened since 1991. Let's stick with the Big Four here. And you can even throw the Loonies in. But if you stick with the Big Four, what's the next team to win a championship?
As of right now, the Timberwolves.
The Timberwolves. Would you have said that 6 months ago?
No, and can you imagine if they actually do?
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, they'll blow the roof off of Target Center.
Well, they'll build them a new arena.
Yeah, all right. Yeah. They're going to build it themselves, apparently, out by Mall of America.
That's fine. Let them spend their money. That's the way it should be.
What a novelty that would be, huh?
Yeah.
To have an arena out in that.
Well, do what the guy in Los Angeles is doing. Steve Ballmer, the Clippers owner. $1 billion plus arena out of his pocket, right next to SoFi.
Okay.
That's cool.
So you don't think it's the Wild, huh? I'm just asking.
No. The problem with the Wild, with the exception of year 3 they went on that run to the Western Conference Finals. That was the pinnacle. It's been a lot of one and dones. Occasionally get into the second round and then done. They've always been in the middle, and they're slightly above average. But this year they're cratering.
Yeah, not very good. What about the Twins? I mean, they made a nice little run.
They did.
Right?
Boy, and my thought process when I left Target Field after they got eliminated by Houston in 4 games, round 2, in my brain I'm thinking, if they bring everyone back and they add a piece or two, this could be a World Series team. Yeah. What's happened since then? Goodbye Sonny, he's in St. Louis. Goodbye Kenta, he's in Detroit. They're not going to make a splashy signing. We know that. So I feel like they're going the wrong way.
Yeah, and I think it's hoping against hope that your Vikings are going to make a run for the Super Bowl, especially without Kirk Cousins. By the way, the price of poker for bringing Kirk Cousins back next year just went up.
It's okay. So the Vikings are in Vegas this week. Will they go back to Vegas for the Super Bowl?
Yeah.
What are the odds?
Only if they buy tickets to the game. Yes. All right. Takes of the day coming up next. Stay with us.
The excitement is real at Fond du Lac Casino. With over 650 slots to play, there's always something going on right in the heart of downtown Duluth. Come in to enjoy 2 floors of entertainment where you'll find some of the hottest new games along with a number of the old favorites. Play at your comfort level all the way up to high stakes where the payouts can be huge. Relax in a comfortable atmosphere and maybe get a beverage while you gather and have fun with your friends. Open 7 days a week so you can
have a great time out at Fond du Lac.
I've been meaning to give you these for many years. I think they're perfect.
Maya?
Oh, I love your earring. Why didn't you try these?
It isn't just about vision, it's about care. Nobody cares for eyes more than Pearl.
10K takes on television as we wrap up yet another episode.
Yes.
We'll have takes of the day here shortly. Going to find out what your mood is. Are you a demanding diva, grumpy guardian, Donnie Downer, happy camper? I mean, there's so many options.
There are many options, yes. Okay. Well, I'm going to circle back to high school sports. How's that?
Okay.
We got the start of the boys basketball, girls basketball, and boys and girls hockey seasons. They're underway, right? But I want to go back to Prep Bowl, which featured in Class 6A, which is the 32 largest schools in the state of Minnesota. In Class 6A, they take all 32 teams and they put them into one big tournament. It's a bracket, much like you see for the NCAA basketball tournament or whatever. And in my mind, and I think in the minds of many who follow high school sports, who cover it, who play in it, who coach it, it is the best tournament because at the end of the year, you get the best teams that are playing the best at the end of the season. There's no regional representation here. We take them all and play down and get the two teams that are playing the best at the end. Whereas in basketball and in hockey, you got to have one from this section, you got to have one from that section. They're divided into 8 sections. So in other words, if you're, say, Armstrong, and you're in the same section as Hopkins year after year in basketball, chances are pretty good you're not going to the state tournament, whether it's boys or girls, right? Because they're always there and you're not. Or if you're in Edina section in hockey, there's probably a chance you're going to miss quite often because of that. And you might be the second best team in the state. But in football, they do it right in Class 6A, and hopefully, the Minnesota State High School League Board of Directors will look at this and say, you know what, that's pretty good. It works out pretty well. By the way, the championship game, Edina and Centennial, the two teams playing for Prep Bowl, by the way, Edina had never been to Prep Bowl, and Centennial hadn't been there since 1984. They were playing the best football at the end of the year, and we had a 28-27 game that went down to the final minutes when head coach Jason Potts decided to go for 2 and send the win, and didn't quite get it, but it was a great ending to a great season and a great tournament. Keep that in mind, you guys, because that needs to change for basketball and hockey for sure.
All right, let's see what that mood meter says. Ooh, pinning the red, as always. In the red zone, he's a grumpy guardian. And we'll see if they listen to you.
They don't.
They have earplugs in when you speak.
Well, I know the basketball people have thrown many different options at him, and they just keep saying, no.
Common sense never prevails, does it?
Boneheads. Took them forever. We finally got a shot clock this year.
Yeah.
We finally got a shot
hope
clock.
for you.
Yeah, all right.
All right. Well, my take of the day is I'm going to go back to the Monday Night Football matchup in Minneapolis a few days ago.
We have to?
Chicago Bears 12, Minnesota Vikings 10. Bears win without scoring a TD. Only team in the NFL to do that this season. But so after the game, I was doing some work for Sirius XM Radio, and I was going into the Bears locker room. Mm-hmm. So while I'm waiting to get in, and it takes a while to get the green light, and I'm standing around this crush of Chicago media. And going into that game, the Bears had won 3 games. They're the monsters of the Midway. But Chicago still cares. I mean, they sent TV reporters down there, radio, internet, newspaper guys. And I'm thinking, wow, the Bears are still a big deal in the Windy City. But here was the kicker. Kevin Warren, you may remember him. He used to be with the Minnesota Vikings, was the Big Ten commissioner. Now he's the president of the Bears. He built U.S. Bank Stadium here, basically. He wants that version down there in Chicagoland. He came up to the media before we got let into that locker room, and he said, I want to thank you for coming. Wow. And I was blown away.
Yep. Happens all the time here in Minnesota.
Big-time, multi-millionaire president thanking us, basically the Chicago folks.
Happens all the time here.
Yeah, all right. Bring him back to the Twin Cities. On that note, let's FedEx out our thank yous. David Weld, Rocky, Paul Langfellow, Bobby Nightengale. For Wally, I'm Eric saying so long. This is 10K Takes, your sports ticket.